Hello, everyone. That was really exciting to look through all those, and there's such an enthusiasm in the city of Corvallis for these talks that I'm just so grateful to have an audience that cares and is interested, and it's get made us get more and more creative each year to come up with talks. And now there's mid-year talks, and I had to figure out what to talk about. But it was so fitting that the theme this year being reciprocity. And I think, I got a chance last spring through the Spring Creek Project to meet Robin Wall Kimmerer and become friends. And it was really wonderful. And that's a big part of, OSU's relationship with Robin. And she had a book that came out that was really about reciprocity, about service berries and reciprocity. And I think that it's been on people's minds a little bit more lately. And so with that sort of becoming a theme of this event, when I was asked, like, oh, would you say a few things? I said, well, yeah, we've got a word. We don't need to say reciprocity. We've got hui hui. And hui hui is a Chinookwawa word. And by the end of this, you're going to understand a lot more of what hui hui means. But hui hui means trade. This is a picture of camas bulbs. Camas is an edible plant that you eat the bulb, but it has a beautiful purple flower. I'll show you some pictures of that later. But the large bulbs in the upper left and the small bulbs in the lower right. So remember that, but we'll also look at this picture again later. So thank you to our hosts for putting on this event and all you generous individuals. Um, this is a picture, the first picture ever drawn, well, by settlers of a Kalapuya man. And this is a Kalapuya man. That's me. So we're still here. There were a lot of books that said the last of the Kalapuya, but I assure you, there might even be more than one Kalapuya in this room tonight. Um, as a Kalapuya person, the Kalapuya are the indigenous people of the Willamette Valley. We have many different bands of Kalapuya people that spoke many different languages, but we say that we've been here since time immemorial, literally since a time that no one can remember. Implicit in that is our understanding of the oldest things we remember, right? We remember Crater Lake being formed with the eruption of Mount Mazama. We remember the tsunami in 1700 on the Oregon coast. We remember the land bridge that blocked the Columbia River. We remember the Missoula floods that happened between 13 to 18,000 years ago. Those are all oral histories that were recorded with our elders in the late 1800s and early 1900s by anthropologists. Many scientists didn't even begin to theorize these events that were told by our ancestors until decades, sometimes a century after they were recorded in our ancestors' tellings. And those stories were maintained and kept alive in our community. More than 7 generations. So if you've heard tribal people talk, and it's a really important narrative because I think it draws people out of this idea that we just make decisions for now. And that's where a lot of the American public is. Because you're here, you're probably a little bit beyond that. So we're going to graduate to more than 7 generations. And what I mean by more than 7 generations is that to trade well, one must consider the past, the present, and the future, not just the future of 7 generations. The concept of planning and making decisions for 7 generations is recognized broadly among tribal people around the United States and beyond. It's been popularized and adopted by those interested in sustainability. While this phrase, planning for 7 generations, is the most repeated takeaway, what often gets missed is the implicit understanding that to plan for 7 generations, you do so with a commitment to a place and one's ancestors for the future, for your descendants. We inherit the knowing, wisdom, and knowledge of our ancestors, as well as the knowledge that is held in a place itself. We're obligated to honor the gifts that came before by not doing, and if you don't do that, you're going to bring offense to the world, and it will become less of itself as a consequence. So people have and continue to have new inputs and new desired outcomes. And our role today in the now is to have to form and make a decision for 7 generations in the future, but also in honor of everything that came before and the teachings of things that worked right. And all of those skills require us to have strong observation skills, reflection, communication, collaboration, and work together. It's not just about the future. You have to remember the past in the context of how you're making those decisions. And ultimately, if it doesn't work for you right now, it doesn't work. It's got to work at all three scales: past, present, future. This is the Kalapuya man on the left. Another Kalapuya man, Joseph Shingretta, who's my ancestor from 7 generations ago, who signed the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855. Maybe he was thinking about me when he signed that treaty. Pretty cool that we even have a picture of him, right? This is like 1880s photography, 1890s photography. Um, and then myself. And then there's the future generations. Who's next? I have a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old. Like, I can imagine that world now, right? How much has that changed? When I first started talking at Chipinafu lectures, I didn't have children. I had a completely different way of thinking about the world. Now I'm sleepless and generally have a hard time remembering things, so that might have something to do with it. But, you know, sleep deprivation was a really important part of vision questing too. So, um, so we need to rethink wealth in order to get a basis of understanding that term hui hui. Um, what if wealth was measured by what you gave and provided for, not what you received, collected, or hoarded? That's the way of my ancestors. Those that were wealthy and held status were those that gave and provided for others: people, plants, animals, and so on, in relationship with all living things. Our humanity is based on our ability to fulfill the obligations to care for and assist others in creating and realizing abundance. More camas for more people and the land, more salmon for us and the rivers, more, etc., etc. This requires a radical rethinking on our part today. It requires changing the focus away from the self. Self as individuals, self as a representative of humanity, generally speaking. Even if we can get over ourselves, we generally think humans are better than everything else. So we're not the main character in this story, nor are humans. We're just another part of it, all with a special ability to produce abundance for others, people, plants, and animals. And that might be the one very thing that humans is so special about humans, is that we actually have this great capacity and therefore an obligation to produce abundance and well-being for ourselves, for other people, other things, other plants. And that is really important. So everything's in a relationship. We have to consider it all, even the rocks. This is a drawing that has a really cool story that we're going to unveil over this next little story time. It is a face that, yeah, it's a Chinookan face. There's a Columbia River art style from this area of the world, and it's something that I created. Um, you know those people in your life that are really great gifters? They seem to always find or give the perfect gift. These are people strong in hui hui. They're attentive, they're perceptive, they're good listeners, and they have strong observation skills. So why I showed this picture is that this is a drawing of a belt buckle that I designed and cast out of bronze. And I did it shortly after I started working at the Cultural Resources Department. And I started working at the Cultural Resources about the same time as another person. And I wore that into the office one day. It was quite fancy. it caught a lot of people's eyes. And that person, the new hire who was with me, said, "Hey, uh, how I want to trade you for that." And I was like, "Oh, you want to trade? Like, cool. Like, let's talk, let's like do a deal." And then I shared, I was like, "Well, this is what this is and this is what it means. When I created this, I sought to capture the ideas of radical hope, joy, and these attributes connection to the divine world. You see there's a spiral shape on the outside of this belt buckle. And this isn't the belt buckle, which we'll get to that part of the story. This is just a drawing of the belt buckle. Um, and for us, these spiral shaped patterns indicate this separation between this world and the divine. And so I put this face of joy and resilience and radical hope at the center of that spiral. Of course, that increased the value significantly. I felt I was in a real negotiation space. And he came back and he said, "I will give you this top of the line sound system that's worth over $1,000." And I just laughed and I was like, "No way." Like, no. And he like insisted and talked it up. And this person was somebody who was of some means. Like, this person had money, right? And so they were trying to talk to me as if money mattered to something like this. Right. And so eventually we made no deal. There was a joke later on down the road. The same person got their own belt buckle and they were very proud of it. And I buckle bumped them uh, in the hallway, um, which was a grand old time. Uh, so this belt buckle had legendary status, and I held on to it for quite a number of years. And then I gave it away. I didn't trade it. I didn't sell it. My mentor, who taught me about a lot of the work that I do, was leaving and took a job somewhere else. And I said, "You need to have this." So that's where the belt buckle went. So, I missed it. I missed it quite a lot. And sure enough, one day I was walking through my town at an art walk, and this was only shown in one gallery show ever, right? For like a 2 week show, this belt buckle was on display. And sure enough, in the window of this gallery, there was a portrait of all of the Chinookan faces that were in the exhibit for those 2 weeks. That a tribal artist who's Umatilla, who lives in town, went to the exhibit, saw it, drew it all, and I got the chance to buy the piece of artwork of this face. So I get to look at it now every day. And it reminds me of great stories and how some people don't have strong hooey skills because they don't understand the value or what's important to people or the value of an object. Um, so kind of a funny joke. Um, so Camus, I think a lot of you are the same repeat offenders that come to these talks. So you've heard me talk about Camus, so I won't go as far into depth. But when we talk about trade and exchange, Camus is this really beautiful example of the relationship between people and a plant and how that can produce abundance over time and the idea of reciprocity and giving. And so often we think of that between people because we don't give life and livelihood and being to plants. But that's what our ancestors and what our people today do for camas. You see, a camas patch, if it's abundant, it reflects your obligations, your social norms, to care for something that your ancestors cared for. And that by harvesting camas, you're actually communing with the plant descendants of your ancestors. And so you're actually fulfilling this social cultural obligation. And when camas is not abundant in a patch that your family gathered from, it means something's wrong and that you should be reflecting about how to make the world a better place. Um, and so a part of that is how one gathers camas in a good way is you go out to a camas patch and you dig up the bulbs and you keep the big ones and you put the little ones back. And it makes it so that next year those camas bulbs don't have to compete with each other. They're not all really tight. They can actually have the room to grow and get big. When you dig them up repeatedly like that, it keeps them higher up in the soil. They don't go deeper and deeper into the ground. So they don't have to use as much energy to get up out of the ground. So the bulbs get bigger over time. And this is a reason why a camas patch that you gather from in a good way actually becomes more abundant over time. You're aerating the soil, you're spreading the bulbs out. Um, this is a good thing. This is how to be in relationship. This is how to have good hui with the camas. This is a salmon mural that's in the city of Portland at the Portland building. It's on the second floor. It's in a public space. It's free to go see. It's done by two tribal artists, Toma Villa from Yakima and Sherrod Yonker, who's an OSU alum from the Coquille tribe. And it's one of my favorite pieces of art right now. Um, and I'm showing it to you because one aspect of thinking about trade is sometimes to be abundant, it's abundance of mind and abundance of spirit. And salmon really represent this. Um, Sometimes the gifts we have to offer in return seem small in comparison to the offers of the gifts that are provided. And in our traditional stories, salmon is one of the first people to step forward when Coyote calls for all the different animals and plants to offer them something of themselves up for people. And salmon and deer both offer themselves, their flesh, their whole entity, their whole being to provide for the people. And in return, people accept the obligations to care for those animals, those species, and do certain things. For us, it's putting the salmon bones back in the river. It's honoring the first fish that comes in on a salmon run. These are ways that we're in relationship, but it's not seen like quid quo pro. We're never going to be able to give back as generously to salmon as what salmon can give to us, but we still fulfill our obligations and we still do what we can in return. And if we don't, they won't be there anymore. They'll abandon us. We've talked a lot about Chimpina and I didn't actually quite realize we were going to go through all of that. So I'm going to summarize a little bit more than what I was going to. But we've had a really good run. We've had 8 years of the Chimpina lecture series. By my account, we've engaged probably 10,000 individuals, not unique individuals. It might just be the same 400 people every single time for my data nerds in the room. But it's a big deal. And I feel like one of the big things that changed that we saw is when we went online and we were so doubtful and uncertain, like all of us during the pandemic. And then we had a video that went on social media and we realized it had a 3,000 person reach. And we went, whoa, what happened? Right? Like, that's really cool. That's different than 400 people gathering at the Majestic. But it's really been a rewarding thing that's happened. And I thought that in honor of the event and hearing what you've heard, there's a lot of hooey that has happened in how that relationship has grown. And I just want to talk about some of that. Um, it's worked because the work matters, and it matters to both of us, Dave Eckert and I, that have been collaborating. Um, it's also because there's constantly new inputs and new desired outcomes. The framework really allows for us to be flexible and scalable, right? We don't know if we'll have funding to do a big music show at a great sound venue, but we know we're going to do something, right? And at the end of the day, we know that when you book somebody and they can't make it, we'll find somebody to get up there. It might be Dave, it might be me, but we're going to talk to you, right? And we're going to figure out what that looks like. And we've had some of those things, last minute cancellations, other things that we've navigated well. But there's always just a persistence that, like, we're going to find a way to make it work. Um, the other thing that I think is interesting to mention, and I can read it in the room, and a lot of you are familiar with it, I actually get pressure inside of my tribe, but also from other places that are like, hey, you guys keep doing that thing down in Corvallis. Why don't you do it here? And why don't you do it there? And why don't you do it here and there? And why do you just keep going back to Corvallis? And well, the difference is Dave Eckert, which Dave steps up. So we've kind of assessed like what each other's strengths are and what we have and what we can give, right? And Dave has just stepped up in a way that like I can't invest the amount of time and relationship management with all of the connections in Corvallis because I'm also having connections in Portland and Ashland and Eugene and everywhere in between because that's where the tribe's interest areas are. But what Dave does is he mobilizes resources in place, he connects interested parties, and he liaisons with me, and we're able to bounce ideas off of each other. The other part is that if I named all these talks, they would be super technical and lame. But Dave is like a promoter, right? Like he knows he's like, oh yeah, this is good language, and we have this great we riff together, and it's just really rewarding. And this is this idea that that should be hooey hooey, that should be good trade, right? I think that we both feel filled up, and it's enjoyable to work with one another, and so it just keeps on kind of generating itself. And when I think about hooey hooey, it's Chimpinafu represents that. We're back to the slide. Hooey hooey. Camus. And I think you probably have a little bit better understanding of what I mean by hooey hooey. I don't mean quid quo pro. I don't mean trading. I don't mean leverage, forcing somebody to do. I got leverage over somebody. I'm talking about willful consent, enjoyable, like partnering, thinking, collaborating. So hooey hooey to trade, be in relationship with yourself, others, your ancestors, your descendants, the land with an intent of honoring and producing abundance. That's what hooey hooey is. So my question to all of you is, what does hooey hooey look like for you? What does it look like for an organization you work with? Thank you.